Alright YouTubes, in today's video we've got a big old tank to paint. We've got a 2000, I think it's 2003, something like that, Land Rover Discovery. An old beast. It's a farmer's car. Farmers love these, and yeah, he's had it for years and he wants to bring it up to scratch because it's full of hay and stuff like that, as you'd expect. So it's got, I've seen this on these a few times actually, and I have done a couple of them in the past. Original paint and all the clear coat was peeling off and deteriorating on the bonnet and on the roof. I haven't done any footage of the hours and hours of sanding all this off, so there's not a lot to see really. And it came off fairly easy. Well, it did for me because Reese done it, so he's taller than me. Launched straight into it with 120 grit, and the clear just flew off. Got all the clear off of it, and then yeah, down to the base coat. Same with the bonnet. Yeah, finished, just went over it again with 180 grit, and then all the edges by hand. Managed to warm up the rubber on the windscreen, because we was going to have the windscreen out. They said they can't get it out without breaking it. They said it's going to be really hard, but I've just got a bit of old rope and stuck some rope in there and managed to wedge it out the way. So yeah, we'll get away with that, I think. All it'll require is some heating up afterwards, and it should all hopefully sit back where it should be. A little bit of stripping, roof bars off. All the headlining sort of half hanging out anyway, so it wasn't too bad to do, and he's got new headlining going in there. So I'm just going to prime it, so I'll show the primer, and this sort of job's going to be what I call a DA it and spray it. So it'll have good builder primer on there, high build primer, 2K, Mipa 4+1. I'll put a good it'd be 3.5 coats on there. Definitely do a half coat for the first coat, so there'll be a lot of edges being picked up on these breakthroughs. They all feel good though. Reece has done a good job of sanding it. A half coat and then 3 good wet coats of primer, and then yeah, like I say, I call it DA and spray it. I'm not going to be blocking all this off, and we're just going to buzz it off with a DA, finish it off with 500 grit, and then mask it up and paint it. And I'm going to paint this one in solvent as well, so solvent base coat going on this job. Obviously this job's a bit difficult for me because of my height, so it's a big wagon, and being painted by a small bloke. All my op-ups out, I've got a ladder out, and I should be able to reach it. One saving grace on this bit, where we've got the little roof windows, it gives me something to lean on to get to the middle. So priming it is a good little bit of practice to see my best way of getting around it all and breaking it into sections. But it's not too bad to do. I have done them before in the past. A couple of times done the roofs on these, so yeah, it's not too bad. And I'm quite looking forward to doing it in solvent base coat as well. But yeah, I don't mind these types of jobs. They're you just get your head down in them. Everything you do to them is a massive improvement to how it looked before. The key with this one, with painting, is want to get it clean out the gun. Don't really want to be doing much polishing on this. Just going edge to edge with the colour as well, which isn't so much of a concern being up on the roof. Obviously we've got the wings. So I'll go and get a bucket of primer mixed up, and we'll stick some primer on it.
Alright YouTubes, how are we all doing? Hope you're all well. Thanks for tuning in. Yeah, I warn you now, this video is going to make you feel a bit giddy. All the up and down on the ladder, I've pretty much left all of it in, so I warn you now, it might make you feel a bit wobbly. So I'll show you a bit of primer going down on this. This is quite a lengthy video, this one. Took me a while to paint this, and I didn't really get to grips with the best positioning for the steps and the ladder until the last coat of clear coat really. I ended up staying on really late at night to paint this because I just wanted it out of my life. It was one of them jobs. Took me longer to paint than I thought. It was just so time consuming getting around it all, and yeah, not falling on it, trying to keep it clean, and you know, keeping the airline out the way and all the rest of it. So primer wise, I just had my cartridge mask on, but for painting I wore my air fed. So with my air fed, you obviously got a separate little hose on that, so it wasn't so bad sort of leaning across with it, but we'll see when we get to that stage. So yeah, the primer, Mipa 4+1 high build mixing ratio. I just put, like I said at the beginning, just put a lighter coat on for the first one, just so it doesn't pick up on the edges. So it picks up, if it picks up on a heavy coat on the first coat, that them sort of those rings around all the breakthroughs, they carry on through all the other layers. So then you know, you got a bit of a task of blocking them out and stuff like that. So the bare metal, there was obviously bare metal on this, and this primer's not designed to go over loads of bare metal, but anything sort of hand size you're okay with. If there's no sort of rust on the bare metal, then I just put a bit of Mipa half promoter over it before I put the high build on, instead of putting any epoxy or anything like that. If I'm dealing with rust and stuff like that, then yeah, it's going to have epoxy on it. But half promoters are, you know, a good thing to put onto bare metal. You know you're going to get good adhesion to it, and yeah, it hasn't got any anti-corrosion properties as such, but it's just about getting the high build to make sure it sticks to it, you know. This car wasn't in the best condition, but the guy loved it, and I found with these old Land Rovers, they're just workhorses, and they go on forever. And this guy's in the midst of sort of doing a mini restoration on it. Really, the rest of the body was pretty straight, to be fair. I haven't got any pictures or any other footage of this, because I did lose a load of stuff out of my phone, so I haven't got any pictures or end results or anything like that. But yeah, so the guy's sort of in the middle of a mini restoration on it. It's been a workhorse, and I think he's like retiring it a little bit. He was on about getting a new one, but he just absolutely loves it. And I've found the people that own these, that they don't want to part with them. They absolutely love them, so they don't mind spending some money on them, you know. So he's having all the underside like restored. It was pretty solid, to be fair, just the usual surface rust over everything. So he was having all that stripped back and treated, having all new components suspension wise and steering rack wise, and bushes and arms, and then interior he's having all new headlining put in it. And apart from it being full of straw and stuff like that, it was in pretty reasonable condition. It wasn't all ripped everywhere. The headlining was all sagging, but yeah, all the seats were in pretty good order, just needed good clean and stuff like that. So it was a bit of a different one for me, this job. Not having to do anything on the sides was was a big help. Obviously trying to lean over it. So just refilling. I use the RPS cups for primer as well, but I do wash them out. I wash them out for primer, get a few goes out of them, and then I do change them. But I need the smaller, the wider filters, so the 200 micron filters for primer. When I buy the RPS cups, I buy them with a 125 micron for obviously water base. And water base in all normal 2K products like clear coat and stuff like that, wet and wet, will go through 125 micron filters no problem, but high build struggles to go through them. So the only way I can get those little 200 micron filters is to either buy a whole pack, you know, a set of RPS cups with them, or I clean them out. I've looked at buying just those filters on their own, and you won't believe what the price of them are. Nearly £100 for like 80 filters, which, yeah, it's way too expensive. So I clean them out anyway. That's why you didn't see me filtering the primer there. As you can see, at the moment I'm just working out best way round it, trying to keep it wet as much as I can, not touch it, wrapping the airline round my leg, just pull it away so it comes from the back, under my, wrap round my leg and my ankle, then comes under my ankle, under my leg and round my back, so I can keep it taut without it drooping and touching the panel. That's why the primer stage I was working that out, but I'll be honest with you, by the time I got to painting it, I'd forgotten what was the best way round. Quite a random way of getting around it. I just found getting to as far as I could on each time. Every time I put a hop up or a ladder in front of me, I just worked out how far I could reach it as far as I can. Obviously primer doesn't matter so much, but gun's angled at different angles, as long as I'm getting a coat on there, it's not too bad. So that's all the primer done. We're straight onto the base coat now. It's all been prepped. So I've got a different gun for base coat. I use an older SataJet 4000 HVLP. It's not an ion on it. Oh, because they didn't have those setups then. And you can see I've started base coating there, and the gun's clean, and I cleaned it before I used it, because it doesn't get used very often. And I had an issue with the trigger, the needle sticking, so it just kept spitting and dribbling paint out, so it wouldn't release back properly and would dribble out. So I had a load of messing about with that. Before I started, that took me about half an hour to get that sorted out. So got the gun sorted out. Solvent base coat, so Mipa Solvent base coat, it's 2-to-1, and the thinner I use, you can use the 2K thinners, fast, medium and slow. I use what's called a stabilising thinner by Mipa. It just helps lay it down a bit smoother, evens up the base coat, and it's better for just more even looking metallic. I'll be honest with you, I haven't used it with any other thinner, so I don't know the comparison. So all I'm trying to do is minimise the amount of times I'm going around this vehicle, especially on the roof. So I'm just trying to get as much coverage as I can in the first coat of base coat. This colour doesn't cover too bad. It's probably got a fair bit of black in it. Greens can be a bit transparent, and this Mipa Solvent base coat does cover quite well. So I'm just trying to get it on there as wet as I can for the first coat, really. Just like I say, just to minimise the amount of times I go round it. So doubling up on the base coat, getting sort of two coats in one really. I decided to do this in solvent because of the drying really. I didn't want to be stood there for ages with the blowguns drying it all, and I know how many times I would have to go round with the water base coat. Initially I decided to start at the back and work my way forward. It was quite a while ago I painted this job, so I can't remember exactly how it all went, to be honest with you. This seemed like a good idea at the time, so I stood on the back bumper, which I can reach quite far. stood on that. It was all a bit of trial and error with the ladders and the airline. Initially, kept having to sort of move it in different positions, and yeah, it's keeping the airline, trying to balance myself, so I had to hold on to that ladder, or you know, hold up, put my hand on something, so trying to keep that airline from touching the body was becoming a bit of a pain. It wasn't too bad because I had my air-fed respirator on, so the airline going into that was away from the vehicle. So yeah, like I say, I was trying to just wrap it around my arm and keep it as taut as possible to stop it touching anywhere, and to stop me from touching any of it at the same time. For an old Sata spray gun, it does a good job of putting solvent base coat on. It's a SataJet 4000 and HVLP, and it's got a 1.3 setup in that. Pretty much full fan, full fluid, and at about 1.92 bar. Yeah, it puts a decent coat on. It's got a brand new setup in it actually, so I sort of resurrected that gun for solvent base coat because I went and worked at a restoration company just for a couple of months. I was sort of subcontracting with them just after lockdown, which was interesting because I'd been on my own for about 17 years by then, so having a boss was an eye-opener. Everything they'd done there was solvent base coat. It's a company called Thornley Kellum. They do some real nice restoration. I went up there and yeah, just done some painting for a couple of months. Really enjoyed it. Give me a break from sort of 18 years of doing this here. It was nice to sort of go somewhere else and use other people's materials and electric. It was quite a novelty. So yeah, that's why I've got that gun set up for base coat, and that's why it's got a brand new setup in it. So I thought I'd treat it to a new setup before I went up there painting their cars. And yeah, it works really well for solvent. I do like solvent. I like the fact I haven't got to spend all that time drying. A job like this, where it takes you a while to get round it all, you know, by the time you're where you started, by the time you've got to the end of it, that base coat's nearly dry. So yeah, I put this one sort of double coat on, and it was almost covered with this one double coat. At the moment, I'm just trying to fill in all the gaps, trying to get it all to tie in, and it's drying in places, so a bit of overspray going over it. So I do find with solvent base coat, it does require a bit more tap ragging, maybe in between coats, especially on the bigger jobs. I probably needed a slower slower thinner in this, but the stabilising thinner doesn't come in speed, so I'm not sure. It does drive fairly fast. The booths are, I think it was just over 20, maybe 21 degrees. I did turn the booth down a little bit to give me a bit more of a window with the base coat drying on me, because I knew it would be a bit time consuming getting round one side to the other, so it probably would have paid to have a slower thinner in there. But I've used solvent base coat in the last 25 years a handful of times, 10 times, maybe 15 times, so I'm a bit out of touch with solvent base coat. I forget about it drying and the way it lays down, but it is nice to use it now and again. I've used water based for so long, longer than I ever used solvent base coat for, so it's nice to go back to it sometimes. And it's nice not having us standing there in a hot booth blow drying it as well. So on this bit here, I couldn't quite reach, so I've just turned the jet in just to get a bit of wetness in that middle where I can't reach, and then open the fan back up to come across the rest of it. So there we have it. That's one coat on there. It's quite painful, that was, wasn't it, to watch? I found it quite painful. So that's that first double coat dried. I'm not going to show you the rest of it, to be honest with you, because we'll be here all day. So I put one more coat on, not a double coat like that, but a bit lighter, and then a bit of a drop coat. I went round it again with one coat, not as wet and not doubled up like that first coat was, and then a bit of a drop coat after that dried. Just kept it all at 2 bar. I think I dropped it down to about 1.8 bar for the drop coat. Give it a good bit of time to gas right off, about 15-20 minutes at 20 odd degrees, and now on with a clear coat. So I'm using my X5500. It's the 1.20 setup RP. So I want it on there wet and as quick as possible, and I'm using the Mipa CX2 clear coat, sort of their budget clear coat, and it come out nice on this job. It laid on there nice, to be honest with you, for a DA it and spray it job. Once that was all primed, we didn't touch it with a block. Just keep, put the smallest interface pad on the DA, buzz it all off with 320 grit, guide coated it, and then just buzzed it all off again with 500 grit. Finished it off all in 500 grit. So getting a good wet coat on for the first coat. Like I say, I want this job to be as clean as possible, so a bit more product's going to hide a bit more dirt, or make the dirt appear a little bit smaller. But to be fair, it came out quite clean. You know, one thing with solvent base coat is you do have to give it a good tack rag, especially after a drop coat, because it just goes everywhere overspray wise compared to water base. It does. So just make sure I give it a good tack rag all over. Got as much of the base coat dust off as possible, and it felt fairly smooth. It wasn't that rough. It felt decent. It dried really well. Trying to get it on there as wet as possible. They're flat panels apart from the sides of the roof, which I did get a couple of sort of runs off that feature line. I put it on a little bit too heavy on the first coat, but the second coats they sort of flooded out and you could barely notice them. So I'm just going round now the best way I can. I think I changed it on the second coat, I can't remember now. Every time I went round it, it was slightly different to the first time. Sort of facing one way on the roof, it's okay to be right-handed, and then another way it isn't. So I'm just trying to reach as far as I can. I've wrapped that airline from my respirator, wrapped it around my arm like a snake. So it's almost just pinned to me, that airline. That was my biggest concern, was the airline touching it while I'm stretching over, because I've got to put one hand over. I was either putting one hand on the top of that ladder, or I was trying pushing my knees against the top of the windows on the doors to try and balance myself, or I was putting my hand on those little quarter windows to try and lean over as far as possible, doing that and trying to keep the airline away from it and my body. I'm 5'6", so big jobs like this I struggle to reach. I struggle to reach sills, to be honest. No, I'm only joking. But I do struggle to reach centres of bonnet, especially if on a lot of cars, especially if I've got wings in the way as well that I'm doing. So it's always a stretching game for me. If only I was a little bit taller. Bit of white fluff stuck to the overspray of the clear coat on the roof there, and it's from them overalls. And to be honest with you, after this job I stopped using disposable overalls. The ones I was getting hold of, they had like the seams on the outside, and I had noticed little white bits of fluff here and there over time floating about. So after this job I bought some, you know, the ones that you can wash a few times. And they seem to be better. So I've got that bit of fluff off anyway. Job come out pretty clean, to be fair. I was pleased with that. We didn't do any polishing on it. It was plenty good enough with the odd little nib left in it. So this was a few months ago now, this job. So my booth had not long been. I put the new coating on the wall, so cleaned it all out, done all the filters, roof filters, extract filters, all the rest of it, and I put the peelable coating on the walls. But what I have noticed since, I've always had tacky coat on the walls, but I liked having tacky coat on there. It was just the jet washing to get it all off, and I would leave it longer than would be necessary really. So it did become a bit of a pain, and overspray had got through in places. So I thought I'd try the peelable one. I'll put the peelable on there, brighten the booth right up, really pleased with it. But as I'm making this video now, it's got to come off. I need some tacky coat on there. I was thinking about putting tacky. Like, I think my jobs have got a bit dirtier, and when I fill the walls now, they just feel dry and dusty, and they never felt like that with tacky coat on there. So I tried that peelable. Hopefully it's going to peel off all right, but it definitely isn't helping with dirt in the jobs. So look at that, got all round that with one full pot, and just run out, just trying to get a little bit to sink back into the gun, being a bit of a tight ass. Instead of loading up a couple of pots in one go, just doing it all with the one pot, which is, I know, it's false economy really, because it takes me time to get back there, and if it was on the second coat, I'm chasing a wet edge, so I'm just a tight ass. So here we are, onto the second coat of clear coat. Pretty much same as before. Get it on there as wet as anything. Flood it on there. That's what I'm doing on this job. The gun setup is not quite full fluid. It's about a quarter of a turn in from resistance. So just wound in a slight bit. About 1.9 bar pressure, and then full fan. So this gun's ideal for this type of job because it's quite a fast setup. 1.20, so it puts out a fair amount, decent amount of material. I'm not hanging about there forever to get a nice wet finish on there. This Mipa CX2, it's okay for jobs this size. It's probably more suited for your smaller single panel jobs, to be honest with you, where it's sort of a budget quick dry clear. I've using this medium hardener, so HS25 in this, and it was okay. I managed to keep it all wet, and then considering doing one side of that roof and then going back to where on the other side to where I started, that's a fair bit of time, and I did have to sort of go over it a little bit to to keep that edge wet, and to chase that wet edge into where I'd already sprayed. So it's probably not the most ideal clear coat to use on a job of this size, but it worked, and it looked pretty decent. I was quite pleased with it, to be honest with you. So I think I'm going to leave it at that. Let you watch the rest of the clear coat going on if you want to. But if you've made it this far, then fair play to you. I don't think I could, and I'm struggling to voice over the rest of it. So watch the rest of the clear coat if you want to. I just want to say a massive thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you again soon. Look after yourselves.